Hello and welcome everybody to our weekly webinar on certainty in the face of uncertainty, what you can do now. And as you're all coming in, I just want to say thank you for all the feedback you're giving us. Thank you for the information you're looking to receive. Today we have our original panelists, and we're going to give you updates on one of the key areas of interest of knowing what to do is in the economic stimulus package, and our resident expert in banking and is with us, and Bob Affleck will be going over that. We also have our regular panelist. Andrew's going to have his stimulus package. Tanya's going to be talking about her work in the area of understanding what to do for safety needs. You know, if you're seeing emergencies right now, what to do. We do have a press release. If you're looking to see more emergencies, the press release is on dentistry's role in frontline support. You know, we found that last month, 12.4% of emergencies in emergency rooms in New York City were dental related. So the work that's being done in dentistry, we have a national campaign going on. We have a national press release. You'll see the press release here. Please grab that. If you'd like to use that, take my name out and put that in, put your name, and then have local press and local attraction to your services as an emergency to do our job in dentistry. We're also going to talk to Steve, and of course, Bob is going to give us some details on the two stimulus programs that are available. And then my dear, oh man, we're so lucky to have the best in mental health, in my opinion. We have Paul Gillane, who is he's a family therapist. You know, a lot of us are sitting home right now with families, spending more time than ever. You know, what are some things, what are some tools, what are some tips, what can we do right now that we can apply right after this session that will help us operate inside that? And also we have my personal therapist, Dave Adamusko. Thank you, Dave, for being here with us. Dave brings a wealth of knowledge, does executive coaching and development, personal development, and from a therapy standpoint. And the wisdom that he brings allows for, you know, what to do from an executive level, a personal development level, on how to manage yourself during these times, how to be healthy on a mental state, as well as Paul. And then I was just, you know, just so grateful to have Sally Spencer-Thomas, the leader in suicide prevention in the workplace. And she does her work all in many industries. Even before this happened, we've had a community of people that unfortunately, we've lost some people in our dental families, and I was searching for solutions, and Frank King and Sally Spencer-Thomas are the best in the world from what I could find, and she's here with us today. So I'm sincerely grateful to you, Sally, for being here today. We're going to get to the mental health piece, and we're going to use most of our time doing that. I just want to get, and I also forgot, Brian is going to talk about teledentistry. So let's go to Brian. Brian, please, if you can just give us the latest on what's happening in the teledentistry world, and then the free offer for our community members so that they can get started with teledentistry.
Great, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. I'll just update everybody on kind of what's happened last week, because everything's happening very quickly. Last week I said that 7 insurance companies were covering the D9995 and 996 codes in conjunction with another exam code. It's now exploded. There's like 3 times as many. So it's an ongoing list. So I would just say, if you do want to charge, you don't have to charge. A lot of people have been asking, do you have to charge? Obviously not. If you just want to do it because it's a better way to practice dentistry, that's available too. And like you were saying, Gary, we have you can get going for absolutely for free for 30 days to try it out through this time. I'll put the link in the chat box, but it's operadds.com/nextlevel. Thanks a lot.
Great, Brian. Thank you. Thanks for your generous offer as well. I want to move over to Tanya. Tanya has the latest in updates with regard to how to treat our patients and some other good details around the virus and how to operate in the world. Tanya, please.
Thank you, Gary. So just to let everybody know, ADA updated. Originally, they were recommending for when you have an emergency patient that you rinse. I would also add gargle with a 1% hydrogen peroxide solution. They upped that to 1.5%, so just know that. I'm putting in the chat box right now a location where you can find testing. This testing is available fast for you. It's FedEx to the place. They turn it on a portal. It's electronic for you, and you get your results in 24 hours. So that is available. It's not realistic for patient care, but if you want to know about your team, so far the teams that I know have tested positive, but some of their family members, have tested negative. Let me start over. The dental teams have tested negative. Some of their family members have tested positive. There's new testing coming out that's going to make it more realistic to use in your practice, and we'll give you updates as we get those. Thanks.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for being here. Andrew, you want to give an update on what you're taking on? You got a stimulus package. We were talking earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here real quick. There you go. Let's see. Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
You're sharing now.
Okay. So what we've put together here is just together, we're stronger together, right? We put together here over at Dr. Genius a package to help. We've gotten some response asking if there's anything we can do to help get doctors and dentists going on our solution as soon as possible, but kind of relieve some of the finance to it. So what we put together is we're waiving the first 2 months of payments. There's my contact information. Just go ahead, feel free to give me a ring on my cell phone, text me, or go ahead and email me, and I'll be sure to get right back to you. And then, to take advantage of this, it's not just for this month or next month. If this thing continues to go on, just know that we're going to be there to support you together. So here's my information. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Andrew. And this is like the type of things to do right now. I know it might be a little bit ahead, but it takes about 60 days to rebuild. If you could stop the share. It takes 60 days to rebuild. One of the things we're going to be talking about is how do we go back to market on the backside of this? What do we do to go back to market? And the content on the website, how we approach things, all those things are going to be in there. So thanks for doing that. So if you have the time now, you can defer the money. And thank you, Andrew, for doing that. And let's go to Bob. Bob has all the latest on the two loans and what action you need to take now. Bob, please.
All right. Thank you so much, Gary. So I just wanted to give you all an update on the payment protection program. Primarily, what I really want to say about this particular package is that the banks that are actually providing this particular program, none of the banks have actually received any of the parameters for this loan. And so for anyone to really be out there kind of sharing what they think it might be, I would say, just hold tight and not, jump to conclusions about what it is that you think that you're going to have to get. What I'm planning to do is I will provide you a complete list of everything that we need in order to be able to submit your information into this product. So actually what we are doing at Citibank is we will provide a digital platform that actually will give you the information that you need to submit to the platform. All you have to do is just go into it, fill out the information, submit your information, and then we'll get it in there as fast as possible and get it out hopefully within 48 hours. So we're going to be moving on this very quickly, and I know all the rest of the other banks are actually in the process of setting up their platforms as well. But I just really want to say that I know that there's just a lot of information going on out there about what everybody thinks it might be, but even the banks don't even know and understand what that is yet. So I just be very careful, for some of the banks that are trying to ask you for information right now because they don't even know what it is. Obviously, for the economic injury disaster loan, for that particular program, from what I understand, they have actually bettered that website, and made it much simpler for you to apply for that particular program. With that, they also give you the option of obtaining that $10,000 grant. And so they'll give you that option once you apply. So if you already have applied, I've heard some doctors come back to me and say that they've reapplied on the new platform. And it's just a much simpler process to go through.
Yeah, I just want to mention, Bob, just to add, we just got up-to-date information on the EIDL $10,000 grant application and the loan. If you filled out a PDF, this is the determining factor whether you need to reapply or not. If it was a PDF, meaning there was no fields that you could fill in, you had to have to fill out a PDF and send it in, you have to reapply, because now as Bob said, the website is now simple, easy. Get your application back in on the EIDL site. You don't have to apply for both. From the information I've learned, you'll get application for the grant. The grant of $10,000 is to get an influx of cash fast. That's why they have that. And then there's the back side of that, which is the actual loan. The loan's figured out by this: 2.5 times your average payroll from 2019. So 2.5 times your average payroll for 2019, up to 10 million. That's the loan amount that you'll get. And then the minute the loan is funded, you'll have 8 weeks to be equal to or greater than that amount. And then what we're finding is, and this is the latest, any balance that you can't, that will be forgiven in the 8 weeks. And then if there's any balance, it goes to a 4.5% loan. That's the latest that we've learned. And that's pretty vetted information from CPAs and from banks that we know right now. Is there anything else, Bob, that you want to add here?
No, that's it. But I will definitely have the parameters on the WhatsApp chat app. So I'll get that out.
The WhatsApp, if you haven't gotten to the WhatsApp, Ryan, if you can post the WhatsApp so that we can get people to the WhatsApp, that's a great source for the latest information.
The link to the WhatsApp group will be in the follow-up to the webinar email.
Okay, the WhatsApp group will be in the follow-up to the webinar, and you want to register for that, because that's the communication in between the weekly meetings, so that we have regular updates and it's easy to get you information, okay? So great. Steve Parker, you are next. We were having a nice chat about suicide prevention, and you know, I think we should bring that to light and transition to our mental health professionals.
Yeah, I think that is, and thanks, Gary. This has become a really interesting and important part of my week. I would like to share that, and I have some very large audiences of readers and viewers and listeners, and it has been very interesting and amazing, the comments that I've gotten from questions from what we're doing right here. So this little community we built has gotten much larger in just 2 or 3 weeks. So I think that just tells you how needed the information is. I think this is a good segue into the topic of today. And Gary and I have had this conversation a number of times, that the suicide rate in dentistry is extremely high. Anxiety, stress, all of those things that contribute to it. And I've had this opinion for some time, and I've spoken on it. I don't think it's the dentistry at all. I don't know, what's unique about dentistry, even from my perspective. 8.5 out of 10 dental practices are owned by a dentist. And what that means is there's somebody who spent 4 years in clinical training. They learned how to, do a crown prep. They learned how to do hygiene. They learned how to do all these things. Now they're thrown into all the normal stuff of running a business, taxes and payroll and overhead and heat, light, rent, and all those things. And that just exploded in the last 3 weeks. That sort of went on steroids. So the calls that I'm getting are, it normally would be somebody who's struggling a little bit, payroll's coming up and they don't know, and their stress level's here. The calls that I'm getting now, stress level is here. And it is the survival of the practice. And, they turn on CNN 20 minutes and that stress level goes, I can't even reach that high. So I think this is a great topic and a great time to, start that ball rolling.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And let's start with we always start with ladies first. I want to open it up to Sally. Just your opening comments on what you're seeing. You can introduce yourself and get a sense of, let's begin the platform here, and then we'll get into some specifics. So please introduce yourself, and we'll allow you some opening comments, please.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gary. It's a very much an honor to be here to have this conversation with your community. I am a clinical psychologist by training, but I've actually moved away from the practice of doing therapy. It was just not a good personality fit. And I was doing leadership development when I lost my brother Carson to suicide in 2004. And that got me really focused again on this work. And what I found out in the aftermath of his death was something nobody told me in graduate school training or so forth, that my brother was kind of the prototypical person to die by suicide. It was a man in the working ages. And so our little nonprofit started a program that addressed suicide prevention in the workplace, but we couldn't get anybody to talk about it until data started coming out years later from the CDC and other places, starting to rank industries by suicide rates. And now all of a sudden people are realizing this is a health and safety priority for a lot of different industries and a lot of different occupations. We've known for a long time that pretty much healthcare across the board has elevated risks for suicide. The dentistry in particular has been hotly debated for decades. And you can look at equally rigorous scientific studies and you're going to get different outcomes. So I'm not going to be here to say that that's going to be my talking point. What I'm going to say is one is too many. Losing one person in the dental industry is too many. And also because you're in a caring profession, dentists and the whole dental industry are in a position to intervene with others who may be at risk. Given our current crisis, it is not surprising to me at all the comments that were just made about small business owners having exponential stress and risk at this time. So I know you wanted me to share just a few tactical things. So I want to transition to that on kind of one thing your audience can do to help themselves, one thing that they can do to help someone that they're worried about, and one thing that they can do to lead their community through this crisis and get to the other side. So one of the things we know when people are in high stress situations, and in particularly long-term high stress situations, is that the brain it hijacks you and you have very, very intense emotions, very intense experiences that makes it really hard to process information, very hard to solve problems, make decisions. And it's not uncommon that people do experience panic attacks. And so I'm going to give you a quick hack to do a quick emotional reset. If you're starting to feel yourself spiral, and this often comes to people at 2 o'clock in the morning or after watching CNN for way too long. You can feel your heart rate go up and shortness of breath, and it's our fear response kicking into overdrive. What many of you probably don't know is that we have a reflex to counteract that, and something that we can artificially stimulate. It's called the mammalian dive reflex. We have this reflex that we've evolved into to prevent us from drowning. You've all experienced it when you dove into a cold body of water or took a cold shower. It kind of catches your breath for a second. And what happens in those seconds, 15, 30 seconds later, is that your body starts to wind itself down really quickly so that you don't drown. Well, we can artificially stimulate that by sticking our face into a bowl of cold water or getting into a really cold shower, 15, 30 seconds, and all of a sudden you can measure it. Your heart rate will start to go down and you'll have a very quick emotional reset. So that's a good hack, whether it's you or someone in your family who is feeling pretty out of control with intense emotions, that you can do really quickly. For helping someone else, there's probably a number of people in your life, whether it's family members or coworkers, that are facing all kinds of big challenges right now and are exhibiting signs. The typical warning signs being probably the one that I tell people to look for the most is agitation. They've stopped sleeping, they're very restless, their mind is racing, and coming alongside that, you'll also often see bursts of anger or increases in substance use. They're just not being like themselves. We definitely encourage having a direct conversation about suicide in those instances. People actually usually do want to talk about it when the conversation is broached with compassion and understanding. It's more than I can go into in this particular conversation, but just trust me, if you approach someone with compassion and ask them a direct question about suicide, the chances are better that they will answer you with a yes if they are thinking about it. And when that happens, you should offer them gratitude for sharing this piece of vulnerability with you, and encourage them that you will be by their side and on their team, help them through this dark time, and that you have some ideas of things that you could look at together. The two things I'll recommend here are, one is the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's one number. It routes locally based on the area code of your phone. So for most people, if you have an area code that's close to where you live, it's going to route to a crisis center close to there. There's a Spanish-speaking version, there's a veterans version, and they can give you local resources fairly quickly. The other, and that number is 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255. There is a volume surge right now to that resource. So there might be a 10, 15-minute wait. Just anticipate that. They're coming, and they are extremely well trained to de-escalate situations and help people come up with a plan on how to stay safe for now. If speed is more of an issue, I encourage people to use the crisis text line. You can text the word hello to 741-741. Again, text the word hello to 741-741. In a matter of seconds, you'll get artificial intelligence kind of just interacting with you to, again, reroute you to somebody who can help right away. So those are just some quick things to do if you're worried about someone. So the last piece I'm going to offer is, how do you help lead your community through this crisis? Many of you have very small teams. It's like a family business. You've known them, you care about them deeply, and they need you. They need you to help lead them through this with confidence and compassion. So the first thing to do in your communication with them is offer them gratitude and connect their service to the overall mission of what you're providing to your communities. It helps people to know that they have served in an important way to people who need their services. And then the second thing that I would say is listen. Give opportunities for people to give you feedback. One of the things that we're coaching the companies that we're working with is to offer a weekly mental health check-in. Just a brief survey, 6 questions. How's it going out there? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? What's making it worse? What's helping? What do you need? That simple intervention alone lets people feel like they matter, that they're seen. And even though they know you cannot solve all their problems, it's somebody else helping carry that burden of stress. And then finally, some ongoing small action steps. We were talking earlier about the just overwhelming tsunami of information that's coming at us. And that's just not anything a trauma brain can handle right now. We need slow drips of small action steps over time. So as you're leading your community, give them just one thing to think about a day, one action step a day that they can do to help themselves or help other people. And that'll do wonders in helping you both encourage trust within your community, that we're going to get through this together. So I'll just pause there. I can't hear you.
I never thought I'd have to be unmuted. My wife loves that tool on me. She's like, it's awesome. She presses the button and it's like shuts me up. So thank you very much for your generosity and your wisdom here and your tools. We're going to go to Paul next. But I wanted to just say thank you for being a part of this community, Sally, and really guiding us to bringing this work. I know you have 9 aspects that you bring into businesses, and we're going to eat all those up and bring this work to the dental community together. Yeah. And I'm looking, so forward to doing this, and I'm so glad that we fast forwarded this because of, the situation we're in now. But really having this be a long-term, solution as well, not just these beautiful short tips, but what we're going to do as a community and as a practice as well.
Let me just address that briefly. So what Gary's referring to are the national guidelines for workplace suicide prevention. They were launched in October of 2019. I'll just share my screen really briefly here if I can. Well, maybe not.
Also, Sally, if somebody has those questions that you asked, we got people asking about that. So Ryan, if you got those questions, if you remember them, if you can post those in the chat, that'd be great.
Yep. So these are the 9 recommended practices that Gary was referring to. And this is not for this moment of crisis, but in the long haul, the slow drip over time of baking this into your company's health culture will make a difference in the long run of reducing suicide risk. So we frame them as upstream. How do you bolster resilience in your workers and in your work environment? Midstream, how do you catch suicidal thoughts and suicidal behavior early before it becomes catastrophic? And then downstream, how do you manage the tragedy and the incredible disruption of a suicide attempt or suicide death? So I'll just pause there and I'll drop this into the chat.
Perfect. Also, Sally, if you would, if you can get those questions in the chat too, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Paul, my good man, thanks for your patience. And let's pick up from here. What would you like to share?
Wow. Well, first of all, I feel really stressed out listening to all this. You know, this is my world, but I'm hearing all this and I'm going, wow. I spent 20 years in business before I became a counselor, so it was a real reminder, but obviously there was never anything like this. So I actually was noticing that I was working on my breathing, which is one of the things that really helps to slow me down, just deeper breaths, because when you get stressed, you breathe more shallowly and more frequently. So I was doing that. I was reminding myself that this is your problem, not mine. I'm empathetic, but you know, if I have all those problems on top of all the other ones I carry, I'll probably be squashed the rest of the day. So kind of setting a boundary with the fact that these are things that you have to do and not necessarily me. And then Sally helped because she gave me something to focus on. Other than all these other things that you guys downloaded to everybody. And so being able to focus on something that was interesting to me and you know, was off topic from the other stuff really was helpful. So, I mean, that's just 3 things I use it because I get stressed out, right? The other thing I really wanted to say is, Sally, your information on that website is terrific for suicide, but I would say at least 3/4, if not all of it, would be great used for the doctors here that support, peer support, things like that, self-care. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. But I'm just saying that she's got the elements right there. And so being able to expand them and not think about it in terms of suicide, just in terms of being able to deal with the stress that we deal with every day right now. So gosh, you know, I have so much in my head trying to think, and I know you kind of mentioned me being a family therapist, but I really hadn't prepared in that way. I thought much more about anxiety and stress and the fight and flight, although I can tie that together too with couples counseling, fight, flight, and freeze. So let me do this. I just want to, it's hard to manage things that you don't understand. So I want to put things in terms of, first off, anxiety and stress. They aren't exactly the same thing, but if you look up their symptoms, they do cross over in many ways. But one of the big differences in stress, it's really coming from outside of me. You know, what's happening out there in the world is impinging on me and, you know, wearing me down. But, you know, the good news is it's out there. Anxiety is inside me. And, you know, so I see things that maybe don't necessitate anxiety, but I get anxious. Some things are worthy of being anxious, but anxiety is more of a chronic thing that goes on regardless of the circumstances outside of me. So I just want to kind of define that a bit. When, you know, we're thinking stress and anxiety, you're not thinking at the top of the emotional scale. I talk to clients in terms of 0 to 10 for emotions, 0 not at all, 10 to the max. And what I talk to them about is what happens at 8, 9, and 10 of emotions. That emotions become physiological. And so let's see. Let me just do a 1-minute manager on the brain. Prefrontal cortex, this is where all of our intelligence is, our language, math, all the advanced stuff is the humans up here. Down in here, the limbic system, that's their emotions. That's the emotional area of your brain. And down here is the brain stem. That's the automatic pilot, what makes my heart beat, what makes me breathe automatically, my blood pressure. So what happens when we go into fight, flight, or freeze is usually, by the way, the prefrontal cortex is supposed to run our emotions. Works best that way. You know, when we're running mostly on emotions, generally it's not going well for us. So this gets so hot that it says to the brainstem we're having an emergency. And when that happens, it downloads cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream. And when we get cortisol, enough cortisol into your bloodstream, you're going to literally shake. It is really almost a steroid to really push whatever emotions I'm experiencing. And, you know, typically that download is going to last a couple or more hours. So it's not something you just walk away from after it happens. It's still rattling around there in your bloodstream. I'll come back to what we can do at that point. But, you know, once that happens, you're really in difficulty. If you're in a discussion with your wife or husband and you hit 8, 9, or 10, you know, the other thing that cortisol does, by the way, it actually, whatever's left working here gets turned off. So you start losing rationale, reason, logic, and you just start going blah, blah, blah in the fight. Also, the talking to yourself gets purely emotional, because this is, again, where your good skills of talking is. So that being said, how do you stop it? Well, let's assume flight, everybody going to places out of town, vacation homes to get away from the virus, right? Fight, if you tried to be in a, if you tried to go to the grocery store lately and tried to move up, you'd be in a fight with somebody for sure. And then freeze. Freeze is one that people don't necessarily know or recognize. But I see it particularly on the couch when I'm working with a couple. Somebody starts to get very emotional and their partner goes into freeze, you know, and their partner is thinking they're bailing out on them, that they don't care, that they don't want to communicate, but they're literally having often a traumatic reaction. And when you can identify that, then it really helps the interaction between them. But it's good for you to know if you get into freeze, you need someone maybe professionally so that you can stay out of that particular state. So let's see. I've got a graphic I have to do. It's going to take me a minute to put it up there, but it's one of the ways that I find that people are able to kind of manage how high they get in that 0 to 10. And trying to stay out of 8, 9, and 10 is really the...
I think we lost Paul.
Yeah.
Oh no, we got him. Not bad for a baby boomer, man. He adjusted fast. When millennial does that, I'm good. But when a boomer does that, I'm like, okay, boomer, you're not coming back. That's good, man.
Okay, okay. Awesome. I hear you. All right.
Oh my gosh.
So,
and you do get the baby boomer head. So this is good. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm going. So there's a pot of soup that sits on the stove and the fire is up really high. And as a result of that, the pot of soup is boiling like crazy and the splatter and the steam's coming out of the top, all right?
Yeah.
So that splatter and the steam that comes out of the top are your behaviors, right? And what causes that are your emotions, that they're just roiling in there. And then that fire that's up so high that creates all this are your thoughts.
Nice.
And learning to manage that is so important, because especially right now where we're really worried about how things are and how they're going to go, we tend to repeat. And by the way, these are mostly negative thoughts, those red lines down below there. And we repeat those over and over. We make that soup boil higher and higher. And then we have all these symptoms that we can't manage. And so being aware of what you're thinking, not allowing yourself to think just because it's true, or I think it's true, I think it over and over. Most people have a list of 5 or 10 things that they kind of dwell on and go over and over. You know, if you say it one time, be done. Don't keep working your way up that 0 to 10, because we know what happens at 8, 9, and 10. All of a sudden, you get physiological with those emotions. The other thing that you can do with these thoughts is some of them are not true. That I'm never going to get out of this. That's not true. You know, most of us are going to get through this. And so if I'm thinking that I'm never going to get out of it, it's untrue. and another thing is not true. And so we eliminate some of that. Then there's also what's known as balancing thoughts. I don't have the money to get through the next 3 months, but somebody's just offered me an incredible loan to be able to get through it. And so that turns down that first thought, it balances it out. And the idea is that basically we turn that fire down. We turn that fire down so this becomes more of a simmer up top, not a full boil. So it's just down in here, and now it's more manageable. Trying to find that area to stay in the 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so I mean, I know I'm talking to a bunch of smart people. Just because you think it doesn't make it true, however, but being able to be aware of the thoughts you're saying, they are connected to the emotions that you have, and you can manage that. And if you can manage that, you can manage your emotions. You can be in a better place throughout all of this. So if I had to give you just a handful of ideas of how to, let me see if I can get back going here. There you go. How to deal with this. You know, it's funny, it's already been mentioned, and we were talking about it before we even got on today. Number 2 way to help yourself out is stop watching TV so much. Mm-hmm. You know, if you know, I mean, we know what it's going to be like at the end of the day. Okay, so check it out. Here's what happened today. Great. But don't be checking in all the time. It's not changing that much, and we know what we need to do. Also, it's a distraction from what you need to do, which is be a little bit more forward thinking about your practice. Number 1 thing, have a support group. You know, this is a way to lay off some of that stress and anxiety with people that understand. They may be people in your field and they may not be. But, you know, all the research says having a support group is the most important thing to get through difficult times. And you guys seem to be able to do incredible stuff technologically. You know, you can get small groups of Zoom groups to be able to talk about things. Subset to that, though, stay away from EORs. You really want positive people right now. If you identify that somebody's just on the downside all the time, you may have to set a boundary with that, because we don't need all of that all the time right now. We get plenty of it. So breathing, we mentioned that earlier, learning bottle breathing. You know, when you're in fight or flight, you are in oxygen deficit to a certain extent. Slowing down, being able to breathe more deeply will help you, will help your mood. It'll slow you down. So just from that particular piece. One of the other things that they teach us, the first thing that you should think about if you're having high anxiety and stress, to get a physical exam. I don't know how easy that is right now. I know a lot of things are being done, you know, with telehealth. But, you know, it may not be the world that's stressing you out. Sometimes it's thyroid issues or blood sugar issues, and you want to know what it is that, and if they check it all out and say, hey, yeah, you know what, you got anxiety, you're going to find a way to deal with it, okay? But if it's not that, if it is something physical, at least you'll know. What else is on that list? Oh, prayer and meditation. A little bit related to breathing, but those 2 things, you know, help center you, bring some focus into your the center part of you. And so I think that's really an important aspect to go. Therapy is actually not a bad thing. You know, particularly that pot of soup is cognitive behavioral thinking, which is really very much aimed at anxiety and depression, very targeted to that. It's short term, gives you tools fairly quickly and perspectives. So I'd say therapy would be something that I'd put on the list anyhow. You know what, I'm sure there's more, and maybe the next gentleman will be able to add on and pick up from that.
Paul, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. A couple of apps that I've used really well with prayer meditation is Mindful, MNDFL, Mindful, great videos. Calm is another one, and Headspace is another. So those are 3, Calm, Headspace, and Mindful, no vowels, Mindful. Those 3 are really, really great, and I use all of those. So thank you, Paul. Also, I love the visual.
You know what? I actually thought of one more thing, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
You know, I was talking about how important a support group is. If your support group is just your immediate family, that's not a support group. And what happens when you dump all of your anxiety into your immediate family and nobody else, it just gets worse. So you need to find places that are outside of the immediate family. You know, share with them too, but don't make them the only one. That's my one family thing for today.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that, you know, for sure. Because, yeah, you get the different dynamic. And it really segues beautifully into what Dave's going to talk about. He and I were chatting about, you know, this overload of information. That's where this whole all began. And then, you know, how do you manage all that? And how do you manage during this time? And Dave's going to give us some great wisdom there. So without any further ado, Dave, please introduce yourself, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for inviting me on into this setting. I just hope what I have to say is helpful to at least one person and worth their time. So thank you. And yeah, thanks Paul and Sally for saying a lot of what I was already going to say. So this should be relatively brief. I love what you guys have contributed and the work that you're doing. So glad to be here with you. Yeah, I had lots of things planned to talk about, and you know, about an hour and a half ago, my son took a face plant on his bike into like a brick planter and cleared out a couple of his teeth prematurely. So thank you to all the great dental workers and dentists and office staff. It took about 5 calls to find someone who was actually going to be able to make it in. Got really worried there for a minute, but he's all right, and looks like the tooth fairy's coming tonight. So
thanks for making it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So yeah, I was just, after hearing other people speak and contemplating on our conversation, just wanted to go over, you know, a couple things. I know for me, it's been a wild ride the last few weeks, and I'm sure most people can identify that. And you know, the others have talked about the response that happens naturally within the body and the brain when intensity kicks up. The body responds to that intensity, and it's been really up and down. And as a response to that, I think I've finally leveled out to a place where I've been able to find some peace in some of this. And reflecting on my own process, I wanted to say a couple things about that maybe can help some others here. And I know for me, a lot of what helps me in the day-to-day is my routine. My routine and feeling a certain amount of confidence and capability in going to work and functioning well at work really helps certain parts of me feel okay about what's going on. And a few weeks ago, that faucet started to turn off real quickly. And I found myself in a different routine, and really trying to adjust to what that was. And you know, as I go through life and those that I work with, I find that others often have that same experience, that a lot of the identity, especially someone that's running a business, as you know, Steve mentioned, has a lot of weight and responsibility of leadership and a lot of identity tied into that. And when one part of our identity kind of slows down or takes a big dip unexpectedly, it can bring about a question of who am I and what am I doing and what am I actually good at? And that can have a pretty profound effect to try to find that equilibrium again. And I've found that when I've been able to breathe and relax and settle into this new routine, I've actually been able to find, you know, until a couple hours ago, some of the nicest family interaction that I've had in a long time. to just be with my wife and with my kids. And for the first couple weeks, I wasn't really able to engage in that because parts of me were really preoccupied with what was changing and shifting. And to be able to slow down and be with that has really helped me turn a bit of a corner here. So in the midst of taking a breath and breathing and settling our own system down, for those of you that are sequestered, if you will, quarantined with family members, take a moment to reconnect. Take a moment to breathe and to be with the people that are closest to you. A lot of times work and business and phones and social media and a lot of things really carry us away from these relationships. And this can be a time to sort of reestablish relationships that may have been sort of cut off by other means. And try to have a little bit of patience. I've noticed that there are times when I've been missing in my relationships with other people. And as all things, why being a therapist and coach is so easy. I recognize this easier with other people. So my wife is one of 6 sisters, and they have this group chat, and it really seems like, the 6 of them and all of us, and it seems like most of the world in general right now, we're all on this roller coaster ride. We're all going up and down, and depending on how much news we're taking in and how many press conferences have just happened and reactions to press conferences and work and all sorts of things that are just, we're all on this roller coaster together. And I've found that, sometimes when my wife is on these texts, it really depends on where other people are in that ride. And it's the same with the 2 of us. There's some times when I wake up or I'm going about the day and I've connected to somebody and I'm actually feeling pretty good. And it's like we're on that roller coaster and she may be in the front car, right? And she's like headed over the edge and she's looking down. And I'm just in the back kind of looking around, kind of on the upswing, just wondering, this is a great view. And then I start to hear the screams in the front. And, those are moments when we can find disconnection. And to just have those patience with ourselves and with other people to know that other people are going to be at different points of this wild ride. And to have, Sally mentioned a really important word. I think it was Sally, or maybe it was Paul, compassion. Having that compassion for other people and also compassion for yourself. And to touch on the suicide topic a little bit, I have a lot of compassion for the parts of people, and that's kind of how I visualize things. It's a part of a person that shows up that says, hey, things might be better if we just weren't alive. I wouldn't have to feel this pain anymore. And that's a real thought. And I don't necessarily think that that thought alone is the enemy, and it can feel like it is. And whether that thought is an extreme thought like that, or a thought like, we're not going to make it out of this, or a thought of, what's going to happen in the next month? Who am I going to have to lay off? I don't think it's those thoughts alone, to use the boiling pot analogy to borrow from Paul. I think it's when we start to fear those thoughts and try to push them away and shun them. And in the spirit of compassion, maybe there are moments when we can just sit down with another person, like Sally was saying, or someone that's working for you, and sometimes sit down with ourselves and extend some some compassion to the thoughts that we might be having. Because more often than not, those responsive thoughts, those reactive thoughts are there really because they don't want to feel pain, because they don't want to be scared. And there's a concept that I call the adult in the room, the higher self, the spiritual self. Different religious and spiritual traditions call this different things, but it's just the wise you that can sit down with that compassion and hear those moments and those fleeting thoughts and say, I get why you're here. It makes sense to me. This is painful. And sort of tying that back into where I started, to really being able to lean in to the shift. And I know most of you on this call are probably here because you're very good at being a leader. You're good at working. You're good at getting things done. But maybe you struggle a little bit with the slowing down, leaning into the fear that you might be feeling and saying, I can do this. We can get through this. And, you know, I really loved Paul's comment on support. If we can be a support to you, this team, happy to be here for you. Getting that internal voice within you strengthened, and then the collective voice. And I think that as a next level community, as a dental community, as you know, an American community, an international community, I think that's what the world needs, is that strengthened voice of compassion, and really being able to look square in the face of the things that we're facing right now, because they're not small. And each of you is facing a very different thing. And that's the individual side that I love to work with, to really get down with the individual and say, what is going on with you today? How can I help? So I hope this was helpful. And Gary, again, thanks again for letting me be able to connect with the community. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Dave. Thank you for your wisdom there. And one of the things you talked about was routine, and using this webinar is a routine, just to put some structure in, because there's a lot of docs out there that are sitting at home. They're used to having the routine, their morning huddle, get up, work out. And so we put some structure into this week, and this is part of it. So on Mondays, just to start putting some visuals in for our doctors and teams, Mondays is a day of gathering all the information, organizing it. Tuesdays, we have 2 sessions. One is at 2 p.m., and that's what we're doing for the teams. Like today, we talked about having a unique purpose for 90 days. And one that came up is, we are a stand for the people of Bucks County. We are the hub for Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where our community can go to learn about the fact and science-based wisdom around safety and health. And so they put that as their mission. And one of the things that we've learned here is getting out of our head and getting into our hearts, moving from that 18 inches from the head to the heart, and coming into a place of purpose and and living from purpose, not up here on fear, but over here out of faith, with a common purpose. So Tuesdays are set up to do team at 2 p.m. At 4 p.m. Eastern, we're doing this with the latest in solvency and strengthening. And then on Wednesdays, our teams, the routine is to get together with your team on your communication system and begin to introduce what you learned on Monday and Tuesday. Now, Wednesday, you're delivering that, let's say at noon, and then Thursday and Friday, we're looking at getting things executed and done. So that's become the format for a week in a dental practice, and it's really starting to show up powerfully. So thank you for, saying routine, and this is what the webinar is about. How do we create certainty in the face of uncertainty? What can we do right now? I think we've heard a lot of things from all of our panelists, the OG panelists, and from our mental health professionals. I believe that we have a few minutes to answer some questions. I know I saw a lot of people chatting away. I'm going to continue to open it up. Does anybody have a burning share from some of the chats that have come up? Anybody on the panel? Steve, yes, we'll go to Steve Parker, please.
I had a little observation, and you know, Dave, it's good to see you again. In fact, I'm going to tell you something show you something that's been laying on my desk for about 2 months, Dave. So what occurred to me is, and this is from something that happened this week, talk to your teams. So I made a suggestion in a just a little video I did, that you start a group chat with your team. Gary, you cannot believe the flood that I've gotten back, that first of all, these chats have just exploded. So, and the docs were all, they're sort of afraid, you know, oh, you know, I don't want to do that. You know, if they have a question, they'll come to me. But it's been the most positive thing. And what I'm getting back is, you know, suddenly I didn't know this person was really funny, and they're sharing pictures of them cooking. And so they're staying together as a team while, you know, they're all in their own homes. But one of the things that jumped out at me was when Dave was talking about groups is maybe somebody who's listening, think about your study club. And I don't know if this, you know, this resonates with you guys, but what I see with doctors and practice owners are they'll reach out to their colleagues in town if, you know, they need advice on something clinical and say, oh, do you use a number 2, you know, I'm not clinical, so I don't know, a number 2 this or number 4 that. They'll have a whole big long conversation about it, but they never reach out and say, listen, I'm struggling. I don't know whether to, should I tell my people to pay for or file for unemployment? Should I tell them to do this? So, you know, Zoom is free, I think, for, if anybody knows, I think it's 30 minutes and I don't know how many people you can get on it, but take your study club to Zoom and have some real conversations with your colleagues in your own town who are literally going through the same thing. And you might be shocked, and be open and just say, man, I'm scared to death. And I'm okay saying that. I know I'm going to get through it, but right now, today, holy crap, you know what I saw on CNN? And you're going to find somebody else who helps you through that. So just wanted to throw that out there as maybe an idea. Don't forget your study club. They're all, you know, they're all practicing dentists and practice owners too.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah,
just to add to that real quick, I just wanted to share my screen to these groups. You know, we're working virtually. You know, we've had an office of 70 something employees, and now we're all working virtually. And we've created these groups, and just to speak to that, every morning we wake up and this is, you know, this is what we had this morning. I don't know if you guys can see it.
It says new week, new day, new intentions, new opportunities, new goals, new actions, new results.
So, you know, and that's what we wake up to every morning. And like Steve said, I mean, you get to see, you know, your team at a whole new level, on a personal level, and it's awesome. So, I mean,
yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, and if you go on nextlevelpractice.com, Morning Huddle Motivator, we send a Morning Huddle Motivator every day. Great little tool. We have 20,000, 30,000 people on that Morning Huddle Motivator, and it gives you structure for your morning huddle. So again, putting routine, putting structure in, having a tool, having a thought for the day, just like Andrew said, is really fantastic. One of the things that I also added, we added in our family, is we have breakfast together and we share our fear. So do we have, like, we're just assuming that fear is present, or sharing whatever's present for us, and then 3 things we're grateful for. And I'll tell you, that little structure, like, because we get busy, we start moving around and we miss the communication. So we've really made that a practice in the morning. What's in your space? Where are you starting the day from? Is it fear? Is it, you know, faith? Is it, where are you coming from? And then what are you grateful for? Simple things like, I'm grateful that I have this food in front of me. I'm grateful, you know, that it's sunny out today. And it just slows down and gets us connected to what's really important, and gets, I think what I gotta raise my hand. Dave helped me with this. I go into ice in my veins when I got to get busy and get stuff done. I just shoot ice in my veins. I numb myself out. I don't know if that's fight, flight, or freeze. It's probably all 3. I want to hear from Paul on this. And then I look at people and I'm physically walking through the house, but nobody else is there. So Dave sits down with my wife and I, and he reconnected me. He's like, look in her eyes. And I realized that there was a human being there. And because when I get into crisis mode, I get into 9/11, 2008, my own alcoholism, I'm going, I got to get through this, and I'm just going to outsmart, outthink, outmuscle, and disconnect. The opposite of addiction is connection, and how to get through this is connection. So I was addicted to everything, workaholism, alcoholism, everythism. And then what there is to do is know that connection is the grounding soul for us to move through. And it acknowledges what Sally and Paul have. I'm going to open up the floor again. Who would like to share? Anybody else want to add anything? We're at 2. We're complete-o, right on time, integrity, started on time, ended on time, gratitude. We'll see you next Tuesday. Make this a part of your routine, and we'll see you then. Have a great one. And thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to our mental health professionals. Gratitude to you all. Lots of love.